Hello, welcome back to History of Wine and the Vine. I'm Emily Kate. So this week we're going to be discussing the history of kind of wine's mixology and recipes. So that might sound a little bit weird to a modern wine drinker because what are you mixing into wine? It's just kind of a standalone thing, but that's a relatively modern concept. So if you've watched my videos before, thank you very much for watching them. And you might also know that water was very commonly mixed in, and actually you would have to kind of say that you were drinking neat wine if you weren't drinking wine with water. It was kind of assumed throughout antiquity that your wine would be diluted to some extent, whether it was a lot or a little, it would have been. So what kind of water? Fresh water or salt water? I've tried saltwater wine. It is absolutely horrible, but then again I have a very different palate from the ancients, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But salt was also commonly added into wine, as was honey to sweeten it. I've tried that too, and it's awesome. So there's definitely a lot of kind of the more basic things, but we also get word about, for instance, pitch, so heated resin that was originally used to kind of fill in the cracks of amphora, but it's alcohol soluble, so it kind of imparted itself into the flavor of the actual wine. Now, once that happened, everyone was kind of split into two groups of pitch and resin tastes horrible in wine, and we kind of like it. So people kind of definitely split off into their camps, and that kind of just made the wine industry more interesting at that point. So now we also have tales of very, very strange things being added into wine. For instance, there's something called Prammian wine, and into the Prammian wine we have evidence that people would grate cheese into the wine. Cheese. I like wine, I like cheese. I like wine and cheese together, but I'm not grating my cheese into my wine. So this definitely took me by surprise. And we also have proof that these people that were grating cheese into the Prammian wine, Prammian is just a type of wine, were also putting in onion. So it was kind of as though it was like a whole meal in and of itself. It was very interesting. So we definitely have a lot of different kind of ideas of what people were doing. Then we have something from Galen, who explains to us that someone had something called Surrentine wine. And Surrentine wine was already very thick, he says, but they actually added Falernian yeast, lees. So lees is spent yeast, and it's known to kind of make the wine more viscous and kind of give it more body. So if you already had a very kind of like thick and heavy and a wine with a lot of body, and you were adding in leaves, you were just trying to make it incredibly thick. So this is kind of a funny story that we have from Galen, but it does show you that things were kind of definitely messed about with, and people were trying to use kind of this idea of almost mixology in order to create different tastes for their wine. So moving on from merely changing wine, we also have wine being the thing that's being mixed in. So I'll explain. We have from Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, the kind of example of wine or grape juice being added into beer. So beer was the #1 choice of drink in ancient Mesopotamia, and they would kind of make it stronger and sweeter by adding in wine. And the name of it is Corona, which if you're in the States or if you drink beer at all, brings to mind Corona for me. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing to think about. But it was just strong and sweet beer because it was mixed with wine or grape juice. So we have these that are kind of mixing drinks, but then we also have food. So wine kind of like being used as an ingredient almost for food, but kind of more than that, because the ingredient, the recipe is for must cakes. So must cakes, or mustacia, must cakes, is actually by Cato in his On Agriculture. And I'm reading here just from Vinum, The Story of Roman Wine by Stuart J. Fleming. Awesome book if you have a chance to go out and get it. And I just want to say up front that one modius is about 18 pints, and one libra is about 3/4 of a pound. So he says for these must cakes, moisten 1 modius of wheat flour with wine must. Add aniseed, cumin, 2 libra of lard, 1 libra of cheese, again cheese, and the bark of a laurel twig. When you have made them into cakes, put bay leaves under them and bake. So this is a legitimate kind of cake being baked here, which I think is pretty interesting and awesome. And then we have Myrtle Wine, and this one comes from Columella, and he wrote on agriculture. So on this one, I'm just going to say up front, 1 librum is about 70% of a pound, and 1 congius is about 7 pints. So you get an idea, but it's more about the relationship between them. So to make this myrtle wine, you take boiled tender sprigs of myrtle with the leaves still on them and a salted must. So this is grape must. And after pounding them, boil down 1 librum of the mixture into 3 congi of must. Only 2 congi remain. The drink made by the same process from the berries of the wild myrtle is called myrtle wine, and it stains the hands. So this was something that was made kind of for medicinal properties and value. So it says here it would treat colic, which is nice. And it was very, very common that things were made out of wine for medicine. Most medicine was administered through wine being used as, like, today we call water the universal solvent. It was just like wine was a spoonful of sugar kind of thing. And you always had wine with your medicine. And next and last, we have kind of the mixology / recipe for Laura, which was wine for farmhands. So obviously it was very watered down. It wasn't good at all. It would turn to vinegar super quickly, and was horrible and disgusting. So I will read you the recipe for it. And this recipe is from Cato's on agriculture as well. So first I'll tell you 1 quadrant is about 3 ounces or 82 grams. And 1 sextarius is about 1 1/4 pints or half a liter. So to make farmhand wine through the winter, pour a jar of 10 quadrilatia of must, add 2 quadrilatia of sharp vinegar, 2 quadrilatia of sapa, which is like boiled down must, kind of, very, very sweet, and 50 quadrilatia of fresh water. Stirred with a stick 3 times a day for 5 consecutive days, and then add 64 sextari of old seawater. Cover the jar and seal it. 10 days later, this wine will last until the summer solstice, and whatever is left after the solstice, it will be a very sharp and excellent vinegar. So clearly this wine was turning into vinegar, and it was mostly old seawater. So not a very nice life for the farmhands of antiquity, was it? But certainly fun for us to learn about, and I hope you enjoyed learning about the mixology and recipes of the ancient world. If you did, give it a thumbs up right down there, and subscribe, because there's always going to be more lectures coming your way. So I will see you next week. Cheers!